Just code your own engine. That's the solution. We have CEOs that are stepping forward to tell their paying customers that performance issues largely are just a figment of their imagination, and that according to their independent and likely non-existent research, that humans can't even detect input lag. You can't even see these frame rate issues. You know what? Let's take it a step further. Let's create a class divide by telling the players that we make premium games for premium gamers. Against the backlash of Borderlands 4's garbage performance, regardless of whatever hardware you're playing on, Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford has come forward on social media and instead of just saying, "We hear you, we're working on it," proceeds to have the most epic and catastrophic crash out that I think I've ever seen in the history of video games. This guy goes on for like 20 responses just talking to himself. Performance in AAA games has been one of the biggest issues that most players are facing today. And the price for these games continues to increase, but so does the hardware demands. And it's because these games are not being made with the customer in mind. They're not setting realistic expectations, and they don't value performance and quality the same way that we do. It's just not happening that way. Today, I want to talk about the public crash out of Borderlands 4. I want to talk about the critical difference in how we value performance while the industry seems to just not value it at all, and why they expect for us to continue to pay for their mistakes. Sorry, my wallet's not feeling all that empathetic. Big thanks to Starford Systems for supporting the channel and sponsoring today's video. They build some of the most powerful custom PCs out there, hand-assembled, stress-tested, and built to last. Whether you want a pre-built rig ready to go or a full custom build, check out Starford Systems and use my link in the description below. Now, as many of you guys might know, I was hyped for Borderlands 4. I love RPGs, I love first-person shooters, I grew up on Diablo, and Borderlands has always been the perfect blend of both. I have put thousands of hours into the series from the very first game. Hell, I even enjoyed Borderlands 3 as long as I played it on mute and pretended like Ava never existed. So when I heard that Borderlands 4 was going to be even bigger, open world, more build diversity, more guns, more bosses, and a more grounded narrative, I could not wait to dive in. And now that it's here, I love it. Don't get me wrong, the game definitely has its shortcomings. The loot feels a lot more toned down earlier on in the game. Dropping a massive boss only to get like 5 basic rarity items is limp and unsatisfying. But beyond that, the game nails so much. The movement options, the sheer variation in baseline builds, the characters, the world building, the tone, even the humor, it all lands way better than the last game. The new weapon types and licensed part systems are great touches too. Playing solo or with friends, Borderlands 4 is exactly what I hoped this series would evolve into. But what I never expected is that it would be a performance dumpster fire. I'm playing Borderlands 4 on an RTX 4090 with a Ryzen 7 9800X 3D. That is not mid-range hardware. It's absolutely not top of the line either, but it's strong enough that I almost never run into any performance issues that I can't solve by just brute forcing it. Yet here I am, even on high settings, I'm stuck relying on DLSS performance, upscaling, and frame gen just to be able to hit something close to stable. And even then, the game is constantly bugging out with lighting that's flickering and tunnels, cave entrances that are glowing, and artifacting ground objects that are popping in and out like it's 2008. Dude, this is 2025. This game likely cost Gearbox over $300 million to make with marketing included. It's been in development for 7 years. It costs $70 at a minimum, and the deluxe edition is pushing $130. And while the game is definitely big, it's cel-shaded. It's not pushing hyper-realistic fidelity. Performance should be the last thing that's dragging this game down. For the kind of money that we spent and the kind of money that they spent, optimization is not a luxury. It is the baseline expectation. Then again, I guess we probably should have seen this coming because just before the game released, there was a promotional fundraiser for Borderlands 4, and the game crashed live while Conan O'Brien was playing it. And suddenly, now that embargo not lifting until the game launched makes perfect sense.
Fantastic.
I've never seen this crash.
I crashed the game. Sorry, Borderlands 4.
I've never seen this crash the game.
Since launch, the conversation around Borderlands 4 has been dominated by its abysmal performance across both PC and console, although PC players have definitely been the loudest, but that's simply just because it's easier to track and measure for these guys. Articles, videos, social media threads, and now Steam are all echoing the exact same complaint. The game runs like trash. And normally, when this happens, you would expect the developer to step up and do the usual PR lines. We hear you, we see the issues, and we're working on those fixes, but this is Gearbox that we're talking about. This is Randy Pitchford, the same CEO when fans were expressing their concerns over whether or not the game would cost $80, told them, well, real fans will buy Borderlands 4. Following the backlash, Randy Pitchford took to Twitter to play customer support after boasting that Borderlands 4 could climb over 120 FPS on 3 to 4-year-old hardware. A player pushed back saying, "What hardware? What are the specs? It's great that you're offering help, but wouldn't it have been better to build it for the most common hardware in the first place?" Randy responds with, "The minimum and recommended specs are published. The most common hardware is a 4-year-old cell phone. Borderlands 4 is a premium game made for premium gamers. Just as it can't run on a PlayStation 4, it cannot be expected to run on outdated PC hardware." Unlike on PlayStation and Xbox, we can't stop PC players with suboptimal hardware from trying to play the game. Some try and get mad, some have real issues we need to fix, and some need to learn how their PCs work at a high end in 2025 and use tools available to find the right balance between frame rate, resolution, and graphic features. This is not a game meant to run on 10-year-old PCs. It uses the full capabilities of modern buses, CPUs, and GPUs. If you're trying to drive a monster truck with a leaf blower's motor, you're going to be disappointed. If you discover your system can't run the game well, whether by accident, wishful thinking, or just not wanting to mess with the settings, please use the refund feature on Steam rather than having a subpar experience. This is one of the most ignorant, insulting, tone-deaf responses I have ever seen from a CEO. Pitchford isn't just deflecting criticism here, he is outright sneering at the people who paid for his product. He's framing Borderlands 4 like it's some kind of elite luxury experience, a premium game made for premium players, while conveniently ignoring the fact that it's a broken mess that can't even run properly on hardware that's far and above the recommended specs. He's not talking to the average player here. He is talking down to them as if the problem is their ignorance and their 10-year-old PC rather than his studio's inability to ship a functional game. But no, instead of acknowledging that, he would rather reduce legitimate complaints into 3 buckets. People that either get mad, people that have real issues, and then the ones that need to learn how their PC works. Translation, if the game runs poorly, it's your fault or your imagination. Please use the refund feature on Steam. Dude, that is not customer support. That is a CEO of a studio basically telling their paying customers to get lost if they're not willing to bend over backwards to tinker with their settings for a $70 to $130 game that should be working out of the box. Imagine dropping hundreds, even thousands of dollars on modern PC hardware, buying a flagship release, and then being told by the guy in charge that you need to become a part-time technician or just walk away. This is not leadership. This is active content. This is the same old Randy Pitchford routine. Gaslight, deflect, insult, and then just blame the players. And the fact that he is doing all of this while Borderlands 4 is collapsing under the weight of its own performance issues just makes this all the more pathetic. And of course, if you guys thought it stopped there with the first tweet and you thought that was going to be the low point, you are wrong, because Pitchford did not stop there. He went on a 19-post rant doubling down on every single excuse and condescension that he could muster. Across the thread that he had made, he insisted that Borderlands 4 was pretty damn optional, claimed that the real issue players were having was that they weren't making the right trade-offs between FPS, resolution, and features, and repeatedly framed 30 FPS on minimum spec and 60 FPS on recommended as perfectly reasonable for 2025. He dismissed any higher expectations as mistakes and blamed players for having the wrong hardware and the wrong mindset. He trotted out that same tired argument that DLSS is the magic fix, even though, and also suggesting that if people don't like frame generation, well, that's just because they saw something scary on the internet, saying that through his own research that he's been led to believe that humans can't even detect input lag. The through line of all 19 posts is the same. The game is fine, you're the problem. Whether it's telling players that they need to accept reality, that their emotions are clouding their judgment, or that they should just refund the game if they don't want to fiddle with their settings. And just when you thought he finally might log off, he drops one more gem. Code your own engine and show us how it's done. We'll be your customer when you pull it off. This is just pure spite for the people that are funding your game. Imagine spending 7 years and hundreds of millions of dollars on a product that can't even maintain a stable performance. And then you turn around and you start mocking your customers by telling them to build their own engine if they think that they can do better. Guys, I think Randy must have left his conscience on a USB drive at medieval times, because I have never seen such a mask-off moment or such an unjustified crash out. He's trying to frame this like players are asking for 300 FPS on 10-year-old hardware, when in reality, channels like Hardware Unboxed have already proven that a stable 30 or even 60 FPS doesn't even hold up on the very hardware that Gearbox is advertising. Their test had shown that Borderlands 4 was struggling on modern GPUs with a 7-year-old 2080 Ti delivering worse results than Cyberpunk 2077 at launch. And when they finally dug into the so-called optimization guide published by NVIDIA, it looked like the entire thing was AI generated, riddled with nonsense recommendations, and we have a CEO that is getting mad that everybody noticed. This makes me so embarrassed to be enjoying Borderlands 4. I would say that I regret the purchase, but 2K gave me a code on the terms that I at least made a video for the game, so here's your video. I'm so getting blackballed from this industry, but that's okay. I make videos for you, not for them. I'm so sick of the moral posturing. How many times I have to see these developers say things like, we work so hard on the game, we love this game. That's great. We want to be able to play the game comfortably. And the fact that you would take offense to that shows that you're just being defensive about not doing your job. You insult your customers and their intelligence. I have never seen somebody fight so hard and try so hard to destroy the reputation of a genuinely solid game that just needed a little bit more time in the oven. You are making permanent statements for temporary problems. All you had to say was, we hear you, we're working on it. That's it. That was too hard. Maybe if you didn't spend that $12 million bonus on a magic house and instead spend it on the salary of your optimization team, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But you don't have any excuses. That's the problem that I don't think that they understand. Cyberpunk 2077 runs better. That's a far more detailed game. Kingdom Come Deliverance runs insanely well, and that game has hyperphotorealism. It has life schedules for its NPC and AI. And that game could work on just about anything. You have competition that's out in the market right now that proves that this is your fault, not the fault of the players or their hardware. But you can't handle that. You can't come to terms with that. Know who your customer is and meet them where they are. Under no circumstances is it our fault for not keeping up with the most modern hardware. And the entire time that he is complaining about all these players not using the right settings, he's constantly bringing up DLSS, he's constantly bringing up frame gen. These are modern solutions to problems that you created, and it's using hardware that most players don't even have access to. I'm so sick of these companies pretending like frame gen is some magic bullet for performance. It's not. It's a band-aid that is there to cover up for steep hardware demands it's created by poor optimization. And half the time, it's creating more problems than it's actually fixing. Extra input latency, artifacting, CPU bottlenecking, and diminishing returns the higher your frame rate goes. The irony is that frame gen is only available on 40 and 50 series GPUs, the exact cards that are going to be running at higher frame rates to begin with. It's a self-defeating solution. The players who actually need the performance boost don't even have access to it, while the people who do have access to it are going to be the ones getting the least benefit from it. What makes this all worse is the industry's blind faith in it. Just a few weeks ago, I had made a video that was pointing out how at least one company finally admitted the obvious, that the pace of hardware and software development has completely outrun players' ability to keep up. Every year, publishers are chasing higher fidelity, more photorealism, more systems that are crammed into these massive games, but wages have not risen with inflation, let alone the cost of being able to keep your hardware current. Players simply cannot afford to upgrade at the rate that these companies are demanding us to. Pitchford leaned hard onto DLSS and frame generation in his responses, but the reality is frame gen is only available on 40 to 50 series GPUs. According to Steam's August hardware survey, that's just 22% of users, meaning that 78% of PC players don't even have access to these so-called solutions that he keeps preaching about. That's what I mean when I say that these companies are not serving their customers where they actually are, and Gearbox isn't alone in doing this. When I saw the heated discourse around performance, I went and checked out to see how it lined up with the game's reception. On Steam, Borderlands 4 was sitting around mostly negative, which is exactly what you would expect given what players were experiencing, but critics, they had the game sitting at an 84 on Metacritic and an 85 on OpenCritic, making it one of the best reviewed games this year and automatically a recommendation. Almost every reviewer did mention performance issues, yet none of those problems really ever seemed to touch the final score. When I pointed out this gap, seeing this disparity between user scores and critic scores, I had summed it up on Twitter saying there is an ocean of difference between how customers value performance and how critics seem to not. This caught the attention of Paul Tossi, a writer from Forbes, who had quoted me saying that I think that there's a difference between a player base using a Steam thumbs down to express valid discontent and a critic submitting a permanent score to Metacritic when there could be a patch the next day. Though you mention it in the review, certainly. This started a bit of a back and forth between me and Paul Tossi, where I had replied saying, I totally get where you're coming from, and ultimately that proves my point. Critics do weight performance issues differently than players because of the permanence of your reviews. While I appreciate you and others mentioning performance, there is a major difference in the reception of it. First impressions are oftentimes last impressions for players, and poor optimization leaves players feeling undervalued in a way that critics don't communicate. Paul pushed back saying, I get why the reaction is different, but I still can't agree that we value it less. We may think about it differently, but I don't think that we care about it less because it doesn't tank our overall score. I also think that there are levels between this doesn't work and frames drop. I clarified my point saying, I'm not saying that you don't care or that it doesn't tie into your review score. However, the perception of value is different between those that are spending money on an experience and the purpose of that experience for them. It's the difference between outrage and inconvenience. He replied, I suppose, but you could extrapolate that to be true for any aspect of a game, i.e., we care less a game is bad because we got a free code, which isn't true. I pushed back again, saying, we do, though. I'm including myself here, so it doesn't feel like I'm trying to dog on you. It feels comparatively worse paying for a bad game than playing it for free. Again, inconvenience versus outrage. One wasted my time, the other wasted my time and money. He countered with, yeah, I mean, I pay for games, I don't pay for others, but it being free never changes my opinion. You just know it's a paid product and go from there. I get how some people may not believe that, but it is what it is. I wrapped it up with, I think this is a great conversation to explore, regardless of differing perspectives and opinions. I know you're on FPS sometimes. Good topic to bring up with Ralph at some point. I know that he pays for his trips and previews out of pocket out of fear of changing his or his audience's perspective. I think this whole conversation illustrates why players in the industry at large are just living in two different realities right now. Paul is not wrong that critics think about it differently, but that's exactly the issue. Critics can afford to think about it differently. For players, performance is not some abstract scoring metric. It's just the difference between a game being playable or not, between a purchase feeling like it's justified or a scam. When these critics are framing these performance issues as minor inconveniences, it comes across as dismissive. Players do not experience bugs and stutters like there's some footnote. We're experiencing those things like they're the actual game. And when these games are costing $70 to $130, that frustration is now hardening into outrage. What I don't think these guys understand is that critics are not living with that same financial weight, not in the same way. Most of these guys are getting their copies for free, and no matter how much they insist that that's not affecting their judgment, it changes the psychology of value. Paying for a broken game hits harder. It feels like betrayal. That's why review scores barely move when performance is bad, and that's why user scores are the ones that are tanking. It's not that we players value it more, it's that we experience the cost of failure more directly. A critic can wait for patches, they can keep their score intact, and they can just move on to the next code in their inbox, but a player, well, we're stuck looking at a broken purchase and wondering why the press seems to just not care about any of our outrage or take any of it seriously. And that all brings me back to a bigger problem, which is permanence. Both these critics and developers are treating performance issues like they're temporary, as if the patches are going to come down the road and then everybody's just going to cycle back. But for players, performance issues sometimes are permanent. We do not live in a world where you can just press pause on life and just replay a game 6 months later when it's finally fixed. Most of us do not have the time to revisit a game that let us down on launch day. Between work, family, and a constant flood of new releases, we just move on. That first impression sticks, and for many players, it's the last impression that game is ever going to get. You can fix it a year later, you can optimize it into the ground, but for the people that refunded, for the ones that uninstalled, for the ones that left negative reviews, in a lot of cases, they're gone. And this isn't just about critics, it's the industry at large that's not valuing performance the same way that players do. Developers have convinced themselves that they can just keep working on a game after it launches, that they'll be able to get it all to come together later, but later doesn't really matter for an audience that's already checked out. That disconnect is exactly why we're seeing this cycle repeat itself over and over again. All these publishers prioritizing release dates and promising patches while players are left with a broken product that they may never touch again. Cyberpunk 2077 and No Man's Sky did a massive service to the players, but did irreparable damage to the games industry, and I'll elaborate on this. These guys made good on their promises. They fixed their games. They over-delivered in some cases and continue to over-deliver in the case of No Man's Sky, but the positive reaction that was around those games and the continued positive reaction around those games taught the industry all the wrong lessons. These guys saw and they say, well, you know what? We can release a game in a garbage state. We can take their money, as long as we promise to fix it later. Essentially, ever since then, I've only seen more and more games release in worse and worse states year after year. And these AAA games are getting so bad. And they used to already release in incomplete states to begin with day one patches and things like that. But now they've seen resurrections. They've seen praise. And they think that they can get away with it at any time. And I'm not saying that that's the goal that a lot of these guys are aiming for, but if they get down to the line of release date, they think that they will have a golden parachute. I guarantee there's probably some strategy meetings where they're like, so the game's going to be really rough because of this, but don't worry, we've seen with other games that this can work out. That's why it's gotten to the point where you're seeing some of these developers getting confused and even angry that we're not showing them the same grace as we would some of these other companies. I think that's why they're getting so upset. They think that the outrage is just too much. They think that it's overbearing and it's odd. And these game journalists and these developers, they think it's weird because they look at all of this as just temporary problems. But what is so temporary about something that seems to happen with every single AAA game? That sounds pretty permanent to me, right? I mean, the two biggest AAA releases of this year, Monster Hunter Wilds and Borderlands 4, both games, terrible performance. That seems permanent. Ultimately, I think that this issue is just going to sort itself out financially. I think that these games are going to come out. I think that they're going to farm the first week that they're out. They're going to make a ton of money in that first week or first month. And then after that, the follow-up sales are just going to die. They're going to die hard. And we already know that's the case because Monster Hunter Wild sold 10 million copies in its first month, but hasn't been able to sell 500,000 since then. That's crazy. The reason why that's happening is because, think about it, the people that are waiting to buy the game are likely the people that don't have the money to play the game, and they're also likely the people who don't have the hardware to be able to play the game. So the games are getting killed by word of mouth, but also the people that can't actually afford to be even able to run some of these games. Got to meet the players where they are. That's why I said before, targeting the modern audience shouldn't be about skin color or gender. It should be about income and hardware. Hopefully they'll learn. If they don't, I'll make a video for them. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did enjoy the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below. Tell me how you guys, if you guys have been enjoying the game at all or playing it at all, what's your experience been with its performance? What else are you guys looking forward to this year? And that's all I got. Stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Family, 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 family.